Hello, and welcome to I'm Too Busy. I'm Christina Flach, your host. I'm a celebrity makeup artist and CEO with a passion for all things beauty, wellness, and success. On this show, I'll take you on exciting journeys, sharing personal stories and insights from inspiring entrepreneurs. Together, we will explore manifestation, health, wellness, and the secrets to thriving in life and business. Let's jump in and get inspired. Hello, I'm Christina Flach, and this is I'm Too Busy. Today, we're having a conversation that most people want to avoid, the one that touches every single life. I am joined by my friend, David Ferrugio, who is the host of a very powerful podcast called Dead Talks, where he opens space for raw, honest conversation about grief, loss, healing, and what it means to truly live. David lost his father on September 11th when he was just 12 years old. In the years that followed, he learned firsthand about how isolating grief can be, especially when the world doesn't know how to talk to you about it. What began as a personal search for understanding has grown into Dead Talks, a platform helping people feel loss alone, people feeling less alone in their pain and more connected through shared humanity. This isn't a conversation about death. It's a conversation about life and choosing how to grieve because no one seems to know how. Hello, my love. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. How are you?
It is such an honor to have you. I aspire to be as amazing as you are with your podcast.
Oh, stop. I'm pretty sure you accomplished that a while back. And beyond.
Oh my gosh. Why don't we start about tell me, I know this isn't the most comfortable thing, but let's go back to September 11th. What do you remember?
You know, a lot of my story is a little foggy, but that day I do remember pretty well. I was in seventh grade, 12 years old, as you mentioned. And the first thing I do remember is getting to first period, which was sometime after 9 a.m. And the first tower hit at 8:46 a.m., I believe. So at this point, the first collision, if you will, took place. I had no idea until my buddy Jeff came into first period and came up to me and was like, "Yo, doesn't your dad work in the World Trade Center?" I said, "Yeah, why?" He said, "A plane flew into the building." I'm like, "What? What?" And
It's like,
so,
that's not even possible.
no, I mean, besides even being possible, just sounded completely just absurd and didn't make sense. And I don't remember him giving me more detail beyond that. All I remember was trying to get to the main office to make a phone call to figure out what it was because I knew something serious had happened. I just didn't know to what extent. And my office, the school office, wouldn't let me make a phone call. So to kind of give a little context there, I'm from Middletown, New Jersey, where I was raised, and it's a big commuter town. So a lot of people, commuted to the city, and I'm pretty sure our town lost the most people in regards to like a single condensed area. So
Wow.
by saying that, I think a lot of kids were getting called down because a lot of people worked in New York, and so they were trying to control some of the chaos and just I guess not letting everyone just use the phone.
Hmm.
So I essentially went through the whole day not knowing what was going on. My mom made the decision to keep me in school, which I think was the right decision because what else are you going to do? Pull me back home while chaos is already occurring and she doesn't know what's what. So she just kept me in school where I was safe. And the school didn't, no one pulled out a TV. No one really knew what was going on, or at least no one told me what was going on. So I went the whole day wondering what was going on. And I was wondering what that meant by a plane flew into the building besides the obvious. And my best friend was with me that day walking home when the school bell rang. And on the way home, I remember making the last bend around the block. And it was a short walk just from school to home. But as soon as I got around that bend, that's when I first saw my child at home for the first time. And the reason I bring that up is because there were cars outside. There were a significant amount of cars, which is the first tell that something's up. And it's obviously something went down. It was kind of the first moment I feel like I knew everything was about to change. I just didn't know it was going to be like this. And so when we got to my house, my mom or someone separated me and James. And I don't remember who it was. I have this at least faded memory that someone was trying to keep me away from the TV. And mind you, this was, 2:30, 3 o'clock. So it was all done. I had no idea at this point that it was all done or what done even meant. But
Hmm.
I got to the TV. Actually, I forced myself there. I remember seeing the look in my cousin's eyes to this day. My cousin Joey was sitting in the living room. I remember at the time recognized the fear in his eyes, but now looking back, it was him looking at me, understanding that this boy's life is just about to completely flip and sit upside down in just a couple paces. And so I saw the footage for the very first time. And again, that was a replay. It was already done. So the news was just playing the footage over and over again. So I caught it for the first time, saw the plane hit my dad's building. He was in Tower One, saw the explosion. And then as soon as that happened, I just remember everything went black. I remember crying. I remember just an instantaneous, deep cry, understanding what happened as much as a 12-year-old could. I mean, it was still obvious even for a kid. But I do remember those tears, the crying, and then almost instantaneously, I don't remember anything after that. When I say anything, of course, I remember certain things, throughout the rest of my life. I hope.
Right, right,
And
right. But
but
it's
for,
odd the things that we remember, like in trauma, don't you think?
yeah, I mean, I suppose it's more odd the things we forget, in my opinion, because I mean, it makes sense to remember certain traumas, but for a while, it didn't make sense to forget until I realized it was just my body's defense mechanism to shut it down. There's a sense of denial to protect myself because it was a system overload.
Do you remember seeing your dad that morning before he left for work?
No, I'd be sleeping by then. So whether he came in to give me a little peck on the forehead or something, maybe. But
Mhm,
I've talked about this before. I have my last memory of like my last goodbye, which I've hung on
mhm.
to as the night before. I'm pretty sure it was, but regardless, it was the last memory that I have of a goodbye, and it was the night before, from what I think. And he was in his boxers, no shirt on as usual, and just kind of
Yeah.
had like a little 45-degree angle to me, gave me a little Italian flip of the wrist as a wave, and just said "Good night, kid," and that was it. And it was just, again, at the moment, it was just every regular old goodbye to my dad, not knowing that would be the last time I'd see him.
How grief was handled or avoided in your world growing up? Do you think when you look back, do you feel like it was handled well, or how do you feel about that?
I think so, yeah. I mean, handled well is subjective. I'm not sure what that means in a sense, but I mean, I couldn't be more grateful for the way that I had an extreme level of support beyond even just my mom and my sisters. But I do know that my everyone did their best, and my mom definitely tried and did create a space of not tough love, because she gave me as more love than I could ever expect, and always gave me, or tried to give me, an opportunity to express myself. It was more me that wasn't willing to express myself, but she wanted to give me that opportunity to do so without forcing it.
Mhm,
She was exemplary in what strength was, continuing to go on, but putting us in school, I believe, a week later, and that wasn't just to force us into a situation. I think she just wanted us to get back to some sense of normality. And
mhm.
anyone could challenge any decision. It's easier to look back and say do this or do that, but ultimately I think my mom, my sisters did the best they can, and they created an incredible space for me to come out of it as unscathed as possible. So I can't look back at anything and be like, no, that should have been done different, because I don't even know what
Did
that
you
means.
did you feel that people just didn't quite know what to say to you, or did you have an experience where people said things that you just looked at them like, "Are you kidding me?" What kind of a question's that?
I don't recall any specific moments. All I can really, I don't know. Maybe I just didn't really let the words affect me as much, and especially now, just today. I know people get really upset at certain words, or the certain slogans that people may say when someone's in a
Mhm.
time of grief. It just doesn't bother me, because I think we're all idiots as humans in general. But beyond that, it's just everyone for the most part is doing their best. They don't know what to say. We're all coming from different beliefs and experiences, and the difference between someone that's has good intentions and someone just being an asshole. If someone's being an asshole
True.
intentionally, then yeah, I'll say something. But for the most part, if someone says something that doesn't align with where I'm at, or maybe it was ill timing, it's like, all right, just let them say that and nod and just move on. I don't know, but I don't really have any specific moments of anyone saying anything that triggered me the wrong way, to be honest.
So, how did it happen that you decided to start this podcast? Why don't you tell me a little bit about how you got to LA and then you decided to start this?
Yeah, I don't remember a specific moment. I just remember that around like 2019, I had the thought process of doing a podcast. It had this weird little, I don't know, intuition or touch of an idea that when I was thinking in my teens of what I'm going to do, I thought I saw myself speaking in some capacity, but I don't know if that meant, in entertainment, or it was something of the sort. But I did feel like I was going to be speaking in some capacity. I thought I was going to come back to my experience with my dad, and I just forgot
Hmm.
about it, unless it was some subconscious thought. But in 2019, I think it just came up more about what I want to do and where I was at that time. And I just kind of, through my experiences as growing into a man and getting older and understanding my own experiences and being in LA for a little bit at that point, almost like 9 years or so, I just thought it was time to put more thought towards that initial thought when I was a teenager, and still had the same yearning. The fact that death and grief is something that I don't see a lot of people talking about. I mean, you see a little bit of it, but it wasn't a mainstream conversation in my head. So I just decided to make a move on it. I thought about it and I just did it. I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew. I mean, it started thinking. I remember I had a layover in Denver one time, really getting ready to try to do something, but I didn't know what it was going to be. I remember I smoked a little joint by myself during this layover in Denver. I was like, oh, maybe I just talk to comedians because I like the humor, and humor is a big aspect of my coping mechanisms, and I have a dark sense.
Right.
You're like, maybe I'll just talk to comedians. Like, no, that's too pigeonholed. Maybe I'll just talk to people that just lost their parents. No, that's too like pigeonholed as well. So it just started, and then it started evolving into more of an eclectic conversation where, yeah, there's mostly grief conversations, a lot of that, but I've had near death experiences. I've talked to violent offenders. I've talked to celebrities, artists, religious ideologies. So it's just become an overarching conversation about death. And it really just started, of course, from my own experience losing my dad, but also wanting to shed the light on other people's stories because mine was in the public light, not as an individual, like a celebrity in some
Right.
capacity, but I got a lot of the attention and still get the attention every year on the 9/11 anniversary because everyone knows when my dad died. So I parlayed the
Right.
idea of normalizing the conversation with wanting to shed light on other people's stories because I got that attention, and other people that died on a normal Tuesday should, maybe get some of the validation.
Why Dead Talks works, I think, because it's not about darkness, it's about truth and connection. What do you find when you interview people that surprises you, that you've learned after doing all these interviews?
I think mostly that uh, everyone wants to talk for the most part, even when people don't want to talk. I feel like people do want to talk. But I think people find a lot of healing in just sharing their story, not so much in sharing the journey of how they found light or some kind of progress or growth and whatnot. It's just there's healing in just sharing in general. And
Hmm.
obviously that is kind of coupled with the idea that their sharing is going to help other people. But it definitely shocked me as I was going on to learn, as my audience grew and as I, have more data and looking at the comment section and the people that follow the show, along with just the people, and not even just the people that come on the show, is that people want to talk. People want to share. And by sharing, it gives them an opportunity to find other people to connect with. And I think that is what a lot of people are yearning for. We want connection, and
Hmm.
especially this day and age, in a world that is as connected as we've ever been and disconnected at the same time. It
True.
The opportunity to share your own story makes you, even if it is selfish in a small capacity, it is selfless because it's going to help a lot of people. So I think I was a little shocked about the amount of people that want to talk about death.
People often ask, am I grieving wrong? Am I grieving right? From what you've seen and lived, is there a thing as a right way or a wrong way to grieve? To,
No, I don't think so. I think inherently no. I think maybe there's limits to it. Like for instance, if you're gonna if someone's response is to go down the substance abuse path, in my head, from how I am, like, maybe for a little bit, a little bender is not going to be the worst thing in the world.
right, right.
But if that gets prolonged and it becomes habit and becomes long term, then in my opinion, yeah, I think that's the wrong way to do it. But ultimately, when it comes to just the emotional aspect, no, I don't think so. Because I feel like it was Alan Watts that said something that's just there's no wrong feelings. There's however you feel and whatever comes up during the grief process, which is very complicated because there's feelings that don't make sense. There's feelings that make you feel guilty because you're thinking things that are against the natural order of how you think a compassionate person would think. It's fine. Like whatever it is, honestly, I just think as much as there's no wrong feelings, he would say there are wrong actions. There's wrong responses. Like if
Hmm.
you're feeling anger, that's fine. That's natural. That's what you naturally feel. Now it's up to you to how you want to respond because there are wrong responses, quote unquote wrong. If I get angry, I could punch a punching bag or I could punch someone in the face. Which one's the better option? Which one's the right quote unquote option? So I think there's no wrong feelings in grief. and there's no wrong way to grieve, but there is limits to the wrong way if it's damaging you. You know what I mean? If it's giving you long-term damage, then yeah, and there's a million different examples to go down that I'm sure anyone could argue this, that, or the other. But at a core of that ideology, no, I don't think there is. But there are some some points we could point to that may not be so good.
We've talked about this on your show because I was grieving after the loss of my husband. And I was saying how it's almost in our culture that we have to be sad and depressed and grieving and just this dark, for me as a widow with a veil and just being unhappy. And my theory is I don't think that's honoring your loved one. I think you can start a foundation, or you can be positive and happy. You can love again and not feel guilty. Do you find that people feel guilty if they're feeling happy again or love again?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like that's a pretty common notion, and I see a lot of this honestly, ironically, in the comment section when I just see people comment on a lot of my posts, which is interesting to see, but sad at the same time. People have made a decision and they don't think it's a decision just to be miserable. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. I mean, I think like I'm just saying from an objective understanding of what they're telling me.
Mhm.
But I think there is maybe an underlying sense of that is their way of honoring them, because if I feel this pain, that's how much I love them. And if I stop feeling sadness, then I'm getting over them. When like you just said, and I posted something recently with Rodney Norman, a comedian who's lost children, and he was taking the side of what you were saying, like the it is a common notion to feel miserable, and being in miserable, you think you're honoring them, but the real way to honor them, again, subjective, is to live a great life, or at least try to live a great life, and make that decision
Right.
to give your best effort at a absolute minimum in some capacity. And it's hard for people to admit that. Like, even when I've said that, literally the most common response when I've said something similar to this online and in the droves of hundreds of comments is, "Oh, this person must have never lost anyone." Which is interesting to me because if you just click the link of the podcast, it tells you who exactly I lost for starters. But that's too much work for someone to do. But I still,
Yes.
but I understand at the same time, because I think a lot of people think grief is not a choice. And I'm not saying it is a choice based on the external event. Of course, that's not a choice, but the way we respond is a choice. And if you're choosing to say that, no, I can't find joy from this, that's a choice. And I'm sorry if that's like tough love, sounding like a insensitive explanation for someone saying that, because I feel for that person. But the way I experience it, David Ferrugio, I'm not saying this is the way to do it or whatnot, is in my experience from my own personal people that I've lost, like my dad and friends and family members, knowing our relationship, I just, it sounds corny and cliche, but they're not going to want me to be, no, stay miserable for me. Like, in my head, it's like, yeah, you
Yeah.
could, no, you could be
Yeah.
sad, be like, if I say hypothetically, if I was to die, and this is some situation that would happen in a movie with Whoopi Goldberg and Patrick Swayze, I don't know. But someone was like, I was like, yeah, be sad. I want you to be sad. I understand you care about it. Be sad. Sure, be sad. But don't be sad for too long. Like, work your way through it. Life's not going to be the same, but it doesn't mean it has to be the same in a shitty way and miserable the entire time. I think it's, if you do want to honor the person, then live the best life you can. I'm not saying it's going to be the same. I'm not saying it's going to be easy. Everyone says it's easier said than done. No shit. It's all easier said than done.
Right.
It's going to be hard. It's going to take effort, but there is a choice in there to at least flip the switch and keep the door a little bit ajar. You don't have to say, I will be better and be toxically positive if that's how you see it, but say, maybe I will be one day. Instead of saying, no, I can never be happy again. Okay, well, you're making a
Well,
choice
that's a
to shut that
choice.
door.
That is a
It's
choice.
a choice inherently.
And I also feel like it's not, it fluctuates. I think the pain of grieving, it ebbs and flows. There's some days you learn to manage it. I don't think you ever get over losing someone, but you learn to manage it. And I think it's important to think of how would you feel if you were looking down on your loved one and they were sad and depressed all the time, and how you would feel. You wouldn't feel good. So I think grief goes through so many different phases. I think it also is important to feel gratitude. We're never, I think that's one thing that you and I have learned is that you're not going to, you're be grateful for the time that you have. You're not entitled to anything. God gives us this life, but it doesn't mean like, okay, I'm with you now, so now I get 60 years. No, that's why every minute, I think for people that have really experienced real loss the way we have, really learn that time is precious and not to waste it and to love big and to try and live the best life you can. Why do you think grief makes people so incredibly uncomfortable?
Because painful. I think in general it's painful. I think there's a lot of layers to it, but I think for the most part, our survival instinct is to avoid pain, and
Hmm.
anything that is so known and universal to be painful, I think we want to avoid it. Therefore, it's fearful. Plus, the idea that it's you don't know when it's going to happen, you don't know how it's going to happen,
That's
and
true.
I think the unknown is just terrifying for a lot of people. Like I was at a coffee shop doing some work just before this, and I overheard some woman right next to me, and she was pretty much like, "Oh man, certainty is a like uncertainty is a bitch. It just sucks to not know." It's like, yeah, I know, but ironically, I know, but at the same time, like this whole life is uncertain, and we think we have this idea of certainty. Like you said, we're not entitled to any of that. And I've heard comments about my own loss, which is fine. It's just, oh man, no child deserves to lose their parent at such a young age. I'm like, I get, again, back to the intention thing.
Yeah,
You asked me,
yeah.
I don't take it like I'm just in my head. I just respond in my own personal sphere, not even to them. Just like, yeah, but who told me that I was supposed to? Just because we have the ability in a perfect world or a perfect health world and situation where we don't have accidents, I know I can probably live to 80 years old. I know I'm healthy and I probably could live later if nothing happens, but just because we can doesn't mean that's going to happen. Like, what do you mean no child should? I understand the sentiment behind it. Totally get
Yeah,
it.
that's just such
Absolutely.
an odd comment after you've experienced that.
Yeah, but that's what
Like,
I'm
what
not
are you
saying.
supposed to do with that comment?
I mean, agree with them and just move on, I guess, because it's just not worth some of the conversations depending on who it is. But at the same time, it's that was one of the biggest lessons I learned based on my experience personally and thousands of others that day was because, okay, I was 12 years old. Wow, I can lose someone so close to me that young. B, oh my God, it could happen that quickly at a blink of an eye without any warning. And then C, oh shit, it could happen in that way, like in a terrorist attack with a building
Right.
flying, like in that
You couldn't make
extravagant
that one
way.
up. You could not make up that story.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like that taught me at a young age, oh no, this shit happens. So nothing's guaranteed. And there's no shoulds or what. Like, this happens all the time. Not so much in the case of September 11th, but look at the news. There's catastrophe all the time. And I think there's some weird thinking that people just don't contemplate it. And everyone thinks, oh no, I'm going to have 80, I'm going to have 60 years with my husband or wife. I'm going to have the rest of my life with my child. I'm going to have the rest of the life with my siblings or everyone in my life because that's how it's supposed to go. And it's not going to happen to me, and it's like a bit of denial. Like I have a really good friend, and I'm not again. This is not coming. I know it sounds like it's not coming from a place of judgment. I'm looking at it from more an objective
Yeah,
ideology.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
try to perceive it in my own how I perceive things. But I remember my buddy's dad died not long ago, and we had a conversation. And obviously, he knew what happened with my dad, so he wanted me. I was by his side for as best I could be, and he didn't think his dad was going to die. And this is not
Isn't
not
that baffling?
it is baffling, but this is even more extreme. And I feel for him because he was going through so much pain, and I was in no place to like flip his script. I just was there for him.
Right, right,
It wasn't
right.
my place to say anything. But at the same time, it was his dad was really sick for a while, and he had a lot of close calls. So it was kind of bouncing back and forth of the idea. He's a tough guy. He was amazing, and he got through all these different obstacles, these health battles, and came out. So you just thought he was going to be okay. But this notion that reminded me, I feel like I wonder if it goes across the board. I'm curious what you think is just this idea that people just don't think it's going to happen to them. And people think they see it on the news, and it's like, and they avoid it and they avoid it and they avoid it. So when it does
Mhm.
happen, it just everything, the whole construct collapses. And I'm not saying when I lose my mom or if anyone goes before me, that it's not going to be painful, that it's not going to suck, that I'm not going to be shocked, that's not going to hurt. But there is going to be a level of, yeah, I'm shocked, but I'm not shocked in some capacity. It happened with my mom. And I'll stop talking in a second, but when my mom went into cardiac arrest in 2023 and her heart stopped for 10 minutes, I found out on the plane, there was an instant natural response of, oh shit, what? No way. And then I paused myself. I was like, in my head, I said, there's no way she dies. There's no way this is how her story ends. Then I paused myself. I said, but it might be. I could be wrong. Dave, you could be wrong. This could be very well wrong. Okay. I processed it really quick. There was a couple of minutes, boom, bang, boom. Now what? And that's when my mom handles shit. So for better or for worse, but I allow myself to process, have those natural thoughts. But then it comes back to even in the moment where I think I might lose my mom. There's no way even though I truly believe that, but I also like the small percentage in my head was like, but I could be wrong. And it's just that acceptance,
Right.
a little bit of acceptance of the reality of how things go, I think goes a long way, as sinister as that may sound.
I will admit that, my son died on Christmas Day when he was 4.5 months old. And I honestly thought, I don't know if I ever told you this, that there was no way I was going to lose someone super close to me for a really long time because that had happened. I actually thought God's going to protect me and all my people because that was so awful and painful and terrible that I'm like, there's no way. So when Ken died, I'm like, no, 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 no. I lose my baby, my husband, my mom. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this can't be happening. But I really thought that. Isn't that funny?
It sounds natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It sounds not. But how did you get to? How do you continue through that? I know this is you're asking me questions, but what is for someone that's lost like a child, which is I'm not putting in a hierarchy, but it's a child.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's different. I think I think that was just so shocking, the whole thing with the baby dying. I went down a dark path. I started taking sleeping pills in the middle of the day just to numb myself for like a month. And then I'm like, my friends and my husband were like, hey, you're not a good drug addict. So go back to drinking the green juice. Um, and so when Ken died, I'm like, I don't have that luxury of losing my shit. I have to keep it together. My kids now have lost their stepdad, who they're incredibly close with, and his kids lost their father. And so I knew I couldn't do that. So I actually went the opposite way. I started making sure I really slept and ate and exercised a couple times a day and really took care of myself because I knew if I didn't, it was going to affect everybody. That I couldn't be that selfish to just lose my shit and, feel sorry for myself. Believe me, I did, but like not like just sitting there drinking, just not being productive. I just knew I couldn't do that. So I think my experience was I really have to take care. Self-care was super important. And I was so concerned about how everyone else was feeling. It actually was a help. I was actually speaking with a friend of mine the other day about this. He had lost his wife and he didn't have, they didn't have children. And so he spent like almost 2 years just really grieving and sad and alone and isolated. And what I said was it was actually easier for me because I had kids and a reason to get up in the morning and be positive. And I think it was really harder for him to get through that with his wife because not having the children. So I went to grief camp at Canyon Ranch, and there was this rabbi named Sherry Hirsch, and she was saying, no one's grief is worse than someone else. Now, you and I can both agree, like losing someone's child at a young age on Christmas Day, it's pretty bad.
Yeah.
But it's true. No one's grief is worse than anyone else's. I mean, we don't have a right to like go, well, that's a 2 on a scale of 10 of bad. But do you think children grieve differently from adults, especially when the loss happens at such a young age?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone grieves differently inherently, and then when you start adding a child's mind, yeah, I think it's completely different. And I was speaking to someone yesterday. We were talking about this, and she made an interesting point. She's like, "Oh, it's so interesting the difference in regards to how children handle grief from a small age gap because the way children are developing so fast from 4 to 7 is such a massive difference. So from 7 to
Right,
11, massive
right.
difference as opposed to 27 to 31 or 45 to 48. You know what I mean? That there's less development. So I feel like when you're a child, when I was 12, I was older. I was like 12 years old. 12-year-old kids know what's going on. They're not the smartest people
Right.
in the world, but they're more developed. But if you're 9 years old, like you understand the world, but you're still undeveloped. Then you're 6, you have to start speaking in riddles. I feel like for the kid to really understand it. You would know better than me. I'm not a father, but I'm just saying I think there's a massive difference between it being from 6 to 9, and it's a big difference in how developed they are and how they can comprehend
Mm-hmm.
this. But
Mm-hmm.
again, ultimately, I think the rule of thumb, everyone just handles the shit. So everyone handles everything so different, so
That's
different. So
true.
it's like, how do
There's no
you?
rule book. You don't get a handbook on grieving.
No, you don't get a handbook. But I think conversations like these help.
Many people quietly wonder if their loved ones still reach out. Do you believe you do hear from your dad?
I think so. I've yearned
Give me
for it for
some
so long.
instances.
Oof, yeah, I give you some. Try to give you a clip right here. This is something that happened to me in regards to well, I think it was a nod, and then my logical brain starts getting to it. But a couple years ago, I was going to New York City with my girlfriend at the time, and we landed in downtown New York, took the ferry from Jersey, excuse me, and we got towards like we were walking through the 9/11 memorial, and I told her, "Hey, I've been here a million times, but if you want to go in there, let me know. Don't go for me. It's kind of amazing thing to see." So we
Yeah.
contemplated outside, pretty improvised. Like, all right, let's go. So we went in there, got my little security plug, went through, and then as soon as we get through security and go down, we beeline it for one area with no plan. Again, we didn't know where we were walking. We didn't even know where we were going, let alone going to this area. And as soon as we get to this one section of the 9/11 memorial, you can start hearing audio playing over the sound system just in this one remembrance section for anyone that's been there. And as soon as I hit like a threshold where I can start hearing the audio that they were playing, it was one of those things where when something happens, your mind can compute it faster than you can actually say it. And
Right.
when I heard this voice, I was like, that sounds familiar. And all I hear in the loud system was, and my father and my husband, David Francis Ferrugio. And it was my mom's voice saying my dad's name as soon as we walked into that section. And again, that's my mom.
That's
I think
bananas.
my mom said the names maybe once, one year, maybe. I don't know if we did it twice in 20 something years. And there's thousands of other people amongst 20 years of footage. I don't know what loop they're playing, but the second we walked into that section, we weren't even in the section yet. I hear my mom and my mom say my dad's name. And it was one of those things where I remember looking at my girl at the time and we were just like, we both got the chills. I started like tearing up. And it was one of those things, of course, my logical brain starts kicking in, but it was just the timing of it all. And it just felt like just like a little nod. And at the end of the day, all
Oh,
I gotta trust is the hairs on my arms, and that's it. And how it felt, how it made me feel. Because of course, the next day and to more times I tell the story, I'm like, yeah, well, they have the recording on loop, and you just happen to walk in at 3:01 p.m. Sure,
there's no
okay.
coincidences. I'm
You know what I
sorry.
mean?
There's
No,
not.
I
There's
agree.
not.
I agree. I think that one for me stood out the most, where it just felt like
Wow.
was
That's a doozy.
yeah, that one just meant a lot for me. But ultimately, yeah, I think they do in ways that we may miss. I think they do in ways when we ask for it. I think the veil is thinner than we think, and if we just ask for it and open ourselves to it, it will be revealed.
Do you talk to your dad?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like it's pretty fucking regular to be honest. I have these kind of, I have the, now that I think about it, yeah, I'm kind of, I feel like I ask things for him. I ask for things from him kind of thing and just guidance and this, that, and the other. And sometimes I just say silly things. So yeah, I guess I do more than I even thought about it now that I'm thinking about it. And I'm not even, I'm looking for a response because when it comes to these signs and this, that, and the other, sometimes I just wonder, yeah, I think everyone can get a sign and everyone probably has, but also at the same time, maybe not. Maybe there's just like I used to yearn for a sign for so long, and there's Medium that randomly reached out to me on Instagram. Never heard from her again, which is the weirdest thing. I'm not even sure if I'm losing my mind or it actually happened. But I get a DM from this woman saying, "Hey, I have these abilities. I don't do it for money. I have this as a day job. I just felt compelled to tell you. I hope it's okay." And she said something along the lines of that if you're always asking for signs from your dad, if that's something that you've always wanted, you wonder why he hasn't given you this no-brainer sign, despite the one that I just told you, like that was one.
Right.
But she was like, if he did come with you with a sign that is like literally no doubting, which maybe that was, but something that is even more going to blow your mind. He said you would stop seeking and being curious, and being curious and your curiosity
Oh,
is your most important nature of what you do and why you're doing what you're doing. So if he revealed a sign to you, you would not be seeking or as curious as you would. Even though my logical brain, I'm like, I feel like I would be more curious, but maybe not.
yeah. Right.
Well,
Right. Right.
the
Right.
whole point of that, the whole point of that story is the fact that maybe there's a window of people that are yearning for a sign. Anyone listening that hasn't gotten a sign, you're asking for it, you're not getting it, feel free to keep trying. There's no harm. I think let go of some of the pressure to get that sign. A may give you that sign, and also B, maybe there's just another reason for not getting your sign. Maybe you just don't need that as much as you think, and there's other ways of getting these messages. So I just relieved a lot of the pressure when I just flip my perspective on maybe the need to get a sign when I think I need something. It's not always what we need.
What are some of the most common signs people report, and why do you think so many are afraid to talk about them?
I don't think anyone's afraid to talk about them anymore, to be honest. There's definitely going to be some people, of course, but I think the day and age we are in now, and what I've seen from my show, I think so many people want to share them. And once you share them, once I start sharing those stories, the woodworks comes out. Everyone starts saying, "Oh my God, this happened to me. That happened to me." I think people are just looking for an outlet and a safety net to say it. And
Mhm.
and if there's a fearful aspect, which I'm sure there is, as you mentioned, it's probably just to be judged, and people think you're going to be crazy. But I think it's getting less and less crazier the more stories that are getting shared, and the world we're in today, I think, is just more accepted. But
Mhm.
some of the more common ones tend to be, I think, light space with like electricity and numbers and stuff like that. I think numbers and lights and electricity tend to be some of the most common ones. And I've spoke to some people along the lines that dive into that field. They say it's much easier for that side to manipulate electricity. That's why if lights flicker and stuff like that seems to be
Mhm.
the easiest pathway for people on the other side, if that's what you believe, to manipulate in our material world.
Do you think connection after death is more about belief, energy, or something else entirely?
Do I believe connections? Rephrase that or say that again. Sorry.
Do you think connection after death is a more about belief, energy, or something else entirely?
All of that. I think everything is energy, so that's the foundation. We're made up of
Right.
energy. Everything that we are is energy. So I think literally everything in existence is energy. So I think that's yes. And then it depends on what you believe. It goes back to everything we discussed, from grief beliefs to perspective, let alone afterlife. Like what you believe is what you're going to get, in my opinion. If you just don't believe in it, then again, there's exceptions. Who knows? Like there's people that don't believe in God and haven't experienced and weren't even thinking about it and just shook them up. So I'm sure there's exceptions to this, but for the most part, I think if you're shutting yourself down to certain experiences or connections, you may be just shutting yourself down from it. That's why I just believe in the maybe theory. Just say maybe. Just keep yourself a little bit open
Right.
to possibility, and especially if it's good. Like why not? If you just want to sit in misery, that's your prerogative. Because I know you feel safe there. You feel safe in your
Right.
misery, whether you want to admit it or not. You feel safe because, again, what I was saying earlier, as idiotic as that sounds, why would that feel safe? Is because it's predictable. And back to the unknown. The unknown is scary. It's scary not to know what's going to happen, the uncertainty. But when you're constantly in misery and you're constantly feeling sad and depressed, you know what tomorrow is going to be like. You know what today is going to be like. It's safe. It's predictable. And then when you
Right.
open up a door of possibilities of trying to be happy, you don't know what that's like because I've been here for so long. That's scary. Even though happiness sounds amazing, but I don't know what that journey is going to look like. So I think if you believe in one thing, then you're going to get the other. So I think the idea of connection to the other side, and that, if I'm answering your question correctly, is a mix of all that.
You brought up maybe a couple minutes ago. And I remember after Ken died, I went to this psychic, and she was telling me that, and I didn't bring up my kids and their golf or anything, but she said, "Oh, your husband wants you to know that when the boys golf, that he is going to be there and to, listen to him when he says which club to use." So, of course, I go running home and I tell my son Nikolai that. And he's like, "Mom, you're batshit crazy." Like, I wish Ken could talk to me, but it's not happening. And then I said, just be open. Maybe it'll happen. Who knows? Literally the next day, he goes to the golf course, and I had given him a bracelet of Ken's, and he was taking it off in his car, and he said he could hear Ken say, "Keep it on, buddy."
Wow.
And yeah, and so then Nikolai goes, "Okay, I'm going to keep it on because I'm going to try and be open because my mom's a nut." And he goes to hit his first. He was playing on this golf course. It was a par five, and it was like up a hill on a cliff with the side. It was this whole terrible hole. And he hit a hole in one.
No shit.
Yeah. And he was like, he called me and he goes, "Okay, maybe you're not entirely batshit.
I
Um,
love that.
this, like, there's no way that I would get a hole in one on a par five on this course." And I heard his voice. So, you know, I think people can experience something. I think my son, tried to be open to that, and then he heard that. I also feel that when you lose someone, I think it's really you're creating your new normal. You and I've spoken about this in the past, and it's not always easy. I remember thinking, "Oh, I'm a makeup artist in my other life." I kept thinking, my agent called me and I said, She's like, what can I do for you? I said, just get me on set because that's my happy place. And I was so delusional that I honestly thought that as soon as I got on set with all the people I work with, that I would feel normal. And then I ran to the set. I got there, set everything up, and I'm like, oh my God, I still feel awful. So I really learned that you have to create a new normal. Do you find that people don't realize that nothing's ever going to be the same and that you do have to create a new normal?
I wonder if it's more. I think a lot of people innately believe that it's never going to be the same. I think that's. I feel like that's very universal. I think everyone thinks.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say everyone for anything, but I think a lot of people already say that no, things are never going to be the same, which is kind of the crux of the issue.
Right.
I think it's accepting a new normal. It's not accepting that things will
Mm-hmm.
be the same. It's just accepting, or it's just the problem of accepting that it's never going to be normal again. You know what I mean? I think that's the. I wonder if that's the play on words that I work. I'm with you on everything you just said. I think it is a new normal, and it's getting back to a normal that I think it's hard to comprehend. Because like, how could things be normal again when it's never going to be the same? And that's why it's a new normal.
It's a new normal.
Yeah,
It's
so
a new
I
normal.
so it's kind of at this point I think I'm just getting a little too technical with the semantics of it, but I do think people accept that things are never going to be the same, but it's can people accept that never being the same being okay? And is like is as long as I think there's a difference in yeah, maybe now the next life is just going to be normal because now it's routine, but I think the really key of the question is how do we make this new normal okay? Like let's make the new
Right.
normal not just normal because it's regular and it's habitual, but the challenge is just getting people over the hump to believe that it can be a new normal and it can be okay. And it's the question is how do you do that? I think it starts with the mindset.
Without sharing anything private, can you describe a moment when a guest shared an experience with a loved one that truly stopped you in your tracks?
I mean, there's one that's I don't know if this is gonna be answer your question, but I can share information because it's a guest and she's been public about it. So that's
Right. And it was on your show and anyone
yeah,
could listen.
it's
So,
on
yeah.
my show, but this isn't specifically with a loved one that blew me away. I think it was just more a response to a horrific experience. And going back to what you said in regards to there's no, all grief is the same, this, that, and the other, and it's not about comparing grief or experiences. But Fallon Farinacci went through some horrible shit. I mean, she was 9 years old when her and her family were held hostage by her mom's stalker, and she had like a younger brother, an older brother. Her parents were, I believe, both of them were killed in the house, and then both of her brothers took their lives a couple like within the next couple of years. So she was just her.
Oh
So
my
she
gosh.
she went through some horrible things. But the whole purpose of what I'm telling you that is that during the episode, while I was listening to her speak, I couldn't help but notice she was focusing on so much positive in the most horrific situation. Like when the first experience happened, when they got out of the hostage situation, at least she did, and her two brothers before they ended up passing away. The first thing she said wasn't even so much the horrible stuff about what she went through and the pain and the violence she just experienced, but she was like, the community was incredible. The people that showed up within literally the community and the support that I had was so beautiful, and it created this, yada, yada, yada. I don't mean to yada, yada over the details, but it was
Yeah. Yeah.
just, it was just the fact I was mind blown that after she's telling this graphic, horrible movie like story that she went through, she was able to focus on the community and how much that shaped the rest of her life and the work that she's doing now. And the whole premise of that is how much it moved me is because look, it's just an example. It's just one example of I've seen too many possibilities to people like Fallon and you and the people that have had on the show of again, life's not perfect. It's going to ebb and flow. I'm sure you cry, I cry. We still get sad. That's not about this. That's not really what the life is, but it's about just where are we putting our flashlight? What are we
Hmm.
shining a light? That's what we're going to see. If you're in a dark room, as Dr. Gladys McGarry told me on the podcast, she's like, where are you going to shine your light? Because if you shine your light in a dark room, that's what you're going to focus on. If you're focused on the dog shit stuck in the bottom of the basement, you're going to see dog shit. And it's again, it's much
Right.
easier said than done. But once you start doing it enough, you start believing it, and it starts shifting. You start looking for the good. And I don't know what better example than someone like what she went through, and all of a sudden she's able to see the good in the worst
Yeah. I mean,
situation
she could have,
possible.
but that was her choice. She could have easily been like, life sucks. I don't believe in God. This is like, I mean, you could understand how she could have thought like that. So
Totally.
I could see where you, from your perspective, you were like, whoa, I'm blown away by this woman because her life is just I mean, the things that she's gone through are unfathomable. What is the difference between someone seeking signs and someone receiving signs?
I think one is an allowing. I think one is just opening up, and that's the receiving side. So I think, I think I wonder if there's seeking is fair too. I don't know. It depends how hard you're looking. Then you're going to make everything a sign, which I don't know.
Right.
Maybe they are, maybe they're not. That's up to the eyes of the beholder there. But I think receiving signs to me, if I had to answer that, is just an allowing. You're allowing things to come to fruition a little more naturally. You're asking about. You can do both simultaneously, like seeking by asking for it, but then you let it go. I think it's an open palm theory. I think you have a bird lands in your hand, you allow it to fly away, and you allow it to come back. And I think that's the allowing,
Mhm.
as opposed to like the closed fist trying to grab onto something, because it just creates this resistance. And I think that resistance just applies to everything we do. I think this idea of willpower is strong and important, but we got to just allow things to come and go. And I think when you just say that maybe, I think you're in receiving mode. You're saying maybe. I'm not seeking
Mhm.
for it, but it's a little sweet side. Maybe I'm going to allow it at the same time, and then you'll be surprised at what happens.
Is there a story from Dead Talks that made you rethink what's possible after death?
But yeah, like every near death experience, to be honest. I mean, a lot. I mean, it's more a compilation of just hearing all these stories and seeing a lot of the consistencies. And I think that as every a lot of the stories I've heard have just been like eye opening. But the more I hear them now that I've heard them so much, it's more just okay. I've heard that before. That's different. Those relate. And so
Mhm.
I'm putting this like small database in my head as opposed to somebody who's smart enough to actually keep data. But I think it's just the consistencies of the outer body experience that people are seeing themselves, their dying body below them. That seems to consistently happen. And according to the stories that I've had, there's certain experiences that are quote unquote provable or anecdotally provable of what their experience was. There always seems to be a consistency of feeling love. Not every experience, there's been some dark ones, but ultimately a lot of them have been just this euphoria and just this understanding that everything is going to be okay in this place that is just almost perfect, or if not is perfect. And that just makes me feel okay if that's even out there, and it's up to me to decide if that's true or not. I think it is. But again, these consistencies of the two I just said, and then also the wilder one is the idea that we choose this life. That's what I've heard multiple times from multiple people, that we actually choose this life that we're experiencing right now. Say that's true, just have fun with it. Say you do believe in choosing this life in some capacity. I think that makes things a lot more fair. I think when people are saying life's not fair, goes back to what you and me were talking about what we're entitled to, this, that, and the other. Because it does on the surface. When I don't look at the news very often. When I see things, I'm like, oh my, like what is going on? That some people are enduring what they're enduring with this pain, this violence, this, that, and the other.
Mhm.
Like that doesn't, on paper, that doesn't seem fair. It seems like the worst, the most evil shit ever. But then what if, just what if we did choose this life? Every person
Right.
chose this life, hypothetically. And you go back, well, why would I ever choose pain and suffering? I don't know. Maybe we just can't comprehend it, and there's a reason for it all. But hypothetically, let's just have fun with it. If it is true, then everything's
Right.
fair because you chose this life and it's fair. If anything, that makes the most sense because at least it justifies some of this bullshit that we're going through. So I think the choosing the life thing is one of the more brain scattering theories and experiences that I've heard.
If grief could speak, what do you think it would want us to know?
Oof, if grief can speak.
Yeah.
Run for the hills. No, I think if grief can speak, uh, just just allow it. I think it would say just allow me in and say
Yeah.
I don't know what you're gonna do with you. I don't know what you're gonna do with me, but whatever you're gonna do with me, just trust yourself and allow me in, and don't fight me, and just trust yourself to allow me in, and just don't fight me.
What advice would you give someone who feels their grief has made them feel disconnected from life?
I would say that's okay. I would say that's okay. If that's what you feel right now, that's okay. I just ask that you don't stay there. That I was to ask that you don't stay there too long, and just
Hmm.
know whether you want to take my word seriously or not. You don't have to stay there. Again, it's not going to be a light switch. It's not going to be, David's right. I'm gonna be connected again. It's not how it's going to happen. I think it's okay where you're at right now. It's okay to feel like that. There's no question. I don't have to hear your story to understand why you would feel like that. If that's how you feel, then that's how you feel. But I'm just letting you know you don't have to stay that way. And
Right.
if you need inspiration, I think all the inspiration is within you. But if you need some external stuff, there's plenty of stories to listen to. There's plenty of people that have felt a similar way that you have. You're not alone in that feeling, and maybe alone in your specific experience in your world, but there's people that have felt like that. There's people that do feel like that, and there's people that have gotten connected again. So at a minimum, just say maybe.
How important is self-care to you? Or do you think, while people are grieving?
How important is self care during grief?
Hmm.
I mean, I think your example proves it, but for me, I think it's extremely important. I mean, even when I've gone through certain experiences, I like working out. I like staying in shape. I like taking care of myself. I like trying to get sleep, even when sleep feels impossible sometimes.
Hmm.
I think it's self care is self love, and I think anything that has to do with love, then you should dive right into that. And it starts with you as well. You know, the more you love yourself, the more you can love other people, and it's just only gonna exponentially multiply the love. So self care equals self love, and do it.
Something grief taught you that surprised you?
How much good can come from it? Um,
Hmm.
how much crazy good comes from it. And it's not to say I wouldn't grab my, as I've said before, it's not, if I had a receipt for my grief, I would happily return all this good shit that's on that grief receipt for whoever I lost. But we don't have a grief receipt, that got shredded a long time ago. So it's just shocking. Not anymore, it's not shocking, but after a lot of work and effort and realization and contemplation, it's just wild how much good comes from it when you again shine your light on that. Just to look for it, even if you're innately saying what good could possibly what, just try, just
Yeah,
forcefully
just
do.
really sit with it for a minute and honestly think about it. And instead of judging it, be open to it, right?
Yeah, just be open to it. And for me, a lot of that comes with humor. Like if so and so dies, like, oh god, well, at least I don't have to listen to any of their memes anymore. Obviously, you don't mean
Right.
obviously you don't mean that, but a little bit of levity breaks it up for me. And
Right.
if humor is not your taste, then okay, I can I had a girl on the podcast the other day said, you know what, me and my dad haven't talked in 6 years. He lost his daughter, my sister, and our relationship I thought we were never gonna have again, but it was to grief. Now, thanks to grief, I have a relationship with my dad again. And she was like,
Interesting.
I think the only remedy for our relationship would have been this scenario. And she's not saying I'm happy my sister's dead, but she's like,
No, right.
I have a relationship with my father now for the first time in 6 years because of grief. And
Wow.
it's not something you want to admit. Like just because you admit something is good and there is good from it, doesn't mean it outweighs the event. Doesn't mean like because you're saying something good happened, that means you're grateful. No, you need to be grateful that you know what, this sucks. This all sucks. I'm so pissed, but you know what? I got this. And it goes back to that gratefulness and just shining your light on something friggin' good. Why not? Just why not? Even if it just it's counterintuitive to the idea how we're supposed to feel, because you're supposed to be black veil, this, that, and the other.
Right.
I think it's let go of supposed to and just trust how it feels.
How do people how do you get your guests? Do people contact you or do you contact people? How do you invite your guests on your show?
It's a mix of everything. You know, I get introduced to a lot of people. Now I'm blessed that people reach out to me. In the beginning, no one knew the hell this was, or I still don't think people know who I was, but they know the podcast at least. And it's started off with people that I knew, friends, and got introduced. And then as I got some traction, I got my first quote unquote big name guest, and now as I've gotten more publicized names, it's become easier as a resume
Hmm.
to get so and so. But my podcast isn't just about having big names. I've had people with no followings and this, that, and the other. It's really just about the story.
The
Uh,
story, absolutely.
but it's a mix. I do a lot of reach out myself when I have some, I definitely have a high list of people that I want to have on the show, like just people I'm fans of, at least on a public persona. So I do a lot
Who's
of,
your dream guest?
oh, there's a few. I have like it's categorical, but
Okay. Well, give
Keanu,
me a couple. Give
yeah,
me a few.
Keanu Reeves definitely is a big one for me. Pete Davidson, only because he's been public about it, and we're both 9/11 boys. So I think that'd be a more just
Oh,
a
yeah.
fascinating discussion between, because he's talked about it a million times. I'm sure he's sick of it, but I don't never see him sit down with someone else that lost their dad on that day. That's a 9/11 boy. Theo Vaughn is another one. I know he lost his dad, and he's like definitely on my comedian. There's a lot of comedians on my list, um,
Hmm.
but those are just a few of them. And I have a lot of women on my show because the women are more likely to talk about it, which is why my audience
Hmm.
is like 70/30. So I definitely always am open to having more men on the show because I think it's important that men talk.
Hmm. silence or conversation, which heals more?
Uh, it's a seesaw. It's both. I think
Hmm.
even though I have a podcast that talks about it, I think that's very important. But sometimes we need to shut up, and I think the balance of both is important because I think it's a balance of again at the coffee shop. This another person, it's the same woman right next to me. Sorry if you're listening to the show, you're great, but she again she's talking right next to me. I'm not trying. I was trying. I put my headphones on after because I didn't like doing. I couldn't. I don't. I needed to focus, but
Right.
he was just dwelling in the shit that was going on and just saying it publicly to someone at the coffee shop. In my head, I'm like, there's always a balance to that. My buddy Jorge wrote a book called the Shut the F Up Method. And it's
Hmm.
pretty much like he's pretty much sometimes it's better to not say so much. He's like maybe butchering it, but he says something along the lines of it's okay to share it with maybe one or two people that you trust and like vent down, let it out. I'm not saying don't do
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
but the more we dwell on, it, the more we say it,
Right.
we're just
That's what.
marinating in it, marinating. It's like yes,
Hmm.
get it out is healthy, talking about it is healthy, but at some capacity, it's like no, okay, now what do we do with it? Like it's we could shed it out, get it all out of your chest for 2 3 minutes, whatever you gotta do, and then what? And then let's do something about it. Because we talk too much about the same shit as opposed to
Well,
something.
they like that story. They just want to keep in that cycle of that. They don't want to get out of it. It's just like what you said. It was comfortable in that place of
Mhm.
the venting or the anger or whatever it is they're feeling. Um, One word you would associate with your dad today.
Huh. Character. I think he has so much character, and I think with that character, he stood out, and not in a grandioso way. I think he stood out only because he made people feel comfortable. If that makes
Hmm.
any sense, he was definitely something I hear from his friends and family. It's just you just brought a specific character slash energy to him that made other people feel at home, and that's always something that I have resting dick face, so I kind of look like an asshole sometimes, but I try to make people feel at home for the most part, and I just something
Steve Dick face. I can't. That's a good one.
yeah, so I think that's something that stood out to me. I think he was just one of a kind.
What did 12-year-old David need most?
Oof, that's a something right there. 12-year-old David besides needing my friggin' dad, I would say,
Well, of them, that's the obvious,
I
but
know, I know.
what did you need of your dad?
I mean, there's just that manly, that fatherhood. And I was raised by
Hmm.
women. I was raised by women, which is amazing. And I love, I want like if I have kids, I want an older daughter because that feminine energy is so
Hmm.
important to me. But there's nothing like a son having his dad and that manly energy, which I had plenty of amazing men in my life, my brother-in-law and my friends' fathers, of course. I had plenty of that growing up, but like in the immediate teens,
Hmm.
even then, I don't know if I was wise enough to even like ask Jeff for man advice as a kid, but I feel like if I had that father, then it just would have been maybe I could have been told it's okay as a man to cry or it's okay to talk about it, even though my mom tried that. But I'm just kind of spitballing right now. I think if anything, I just maybe needed a little more push to talk, a little more push to express because it took me a while to get there. And not that my mom didn't do that; it was on me. I think it was just
Right, right. You just well
me telling
at
me.
that
Yeah,
time, right?
yeah,
You
me
weren't
telling me.
able to at that time.
Yeah, no,
What do people say that hurts even when they mean well?
the truth. The truth hurts, and then I think if
Mm-hmm.
you're telling the truth, you mean well. Unless you're delivering it like a complete asshole. But outside of that, I think the truth just hurts. Um,
Right.
but it stings for a little bit, but it's necessary.
What has grief taught you about love?
That it's worth it.
That's true. A moment on Dead Talks that has changed you.
Probably the conversation with my mom. I thought about it for a long time. I brought it up live on the show. I was saying to her, felt guilty that I wasn't a support system for my sisters or my mom, and because I was quote unquote the man of the house. Like, did I step up? Did I do enough?
Hmm.
I was always wonder this, and she stopped me in my tracks. And it's live on the episode. She says, "No, you're wrong." It's like you're wrong. You were a support system, and you were my support system. She like had a moment in the podcast where you see her kind of adjust, go, shit, that's what it is. It's like, you were my effing support system, because what you were saying about having children and that mean. So even though it wasn't me like stepping up, just my existence was the
Right.
support system for my mom. And that's
I get that.
you know what I mean? So that just
Hmm.
really it just shook a lot off me in some capacity of just letting the weight down, because I heard from my mom, the woman who else I want to hear that from, that was just like, no,
Right.
stop it, like you did all you could and you were a great son and yada yada yada.
That's nice. It's beautiful, actually. What scares people most about death?
Not knowing what the hell's going to happen, and
Hmm.
probably how we're going to die. I think those two probably will do it, but I think it goes back to the same thing we discussed. It's not knowing what the heck's going to happen. um is probably the biggest one, in my opinion.
What What brings you peace now?
Being with the people I love, of course, and silence. I like silence a lot. I like quiet, especially for someone
Hmm.
who yaps his ass off for a living now. It's like I think I really like peace and quiet. I like sometimes just not saying anything, and not even though again I enjoy the opposite approach many times, but I find so much peace and sometimes in not having a conversation at all, and just sitting there and not having to think about anything, and just
Just having peace within yourself.
yeah.
You recently just took a big trip. Do you want to talk about that?
Oh yeah, that was awesome. So I flew to Australia with my buddy Alex. He had to leave early, so I said, "Screw it." I flew 9 hours to Thailand to eventually meet another couple buddies that are from Europe to Koh Samui, an island, and then I had to go back to Hong Kong to fly out to LA. But I just decided to stay there for like 4 or 5 days or so. Hong Kong, I was there by myself, and then I met a buddy for one night. We had a layover, but it was mostly see one friend. He left Thailand for 2 days by myself, met more friends in Thailand, and then Hong Kong by myself. And now I'm still exhausted. It's been 6 days.
Oh my
The time
gosh.
zones have really messed me up. I don't know.
Oh,
I've been to that side
it's
of the
a
world,
killer.
but I did something wrong on the way back where I've been adjusting ever since.
Yeah, it's a doozy. What does healing really mean to you?
Improving. It's ing, not ed, not healed. It's
Hmm.
I think it's just improving, and sometimes that improving is just trying. I think I mean, at least try, and you're the only one that can answer if you're actually trying or not. You could tell people, you could bullshit people. That's up to you. But it's up to us just to answer for ourselves. Are you actually trying?
I find trying to be an interesting word because it kind of gives you wiggle room to be like, well, I tried. So you could kind of like not really. I think you have to make a decision to actually commit to whatever it is you're doing, because
Right.
trying is like, well, I tried. No, I don't want to try anymore.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, because I think I'm with you. I'm with you on that. But at the same time, I think that kind of goes back to the idea of what I'm saying. Only you know if you actually tried. 'Cause when you say, yeah, I tried, then that I can say I'm gonna try to get a hit in baseball. I'm gonna do my best, but you fail 7 times, 7 out of 10 times, and you're a great player. So
Right.
I didn't accomplish 10. I'm not going to get 10 hits out of 10. I'm not going to go 10 for
Right.
10. I'm going to be playing, making millions. I'll be the greatest baseball player of all time. But you fail
Right.
70% of the time, but you still try. But I think there's just a subjective, only internal knowing if you've actually tried. So yeah,
Right.
I understand the semantics of like, no, do it. But I'm not going to get a hit every 10 times as a baseball player. It's a very specific analogy. I'm I'm
That's
I'm
that's
I'm
true.
I'm just saying, like, only you know. Did you actually try, or you just strapping on? I tried, because if you going in there with the intent, you can still try and not intend to fail. But I get what you're saying. I think certain things when it comes to what we're doing, no, I'm gonna get over this hump. It's gonna be done. So I get what you're saying at the same time.
What is one thing grief has stripped away for you?
Trivial priorities that I thought were priorities. It's just stripped away all these little bolts that have been screwing me together that are absolutely meaningless.
What has one thing grief given you?
Everything. It's given me the exact opposite of what I just told you. It's given me what matters. It's given me an understanding of impermanence. It's given me understanding of all that matters is literally this moment right now with you and me, and everything else is just TBD.
Hmm. What have I not asked you that you'd like to share today?
uh, what have you not asked? You not asked me how I'm doing.
How are you doing, my darling?
I'm so great. Thank you so much for asking. But other than that, no, your questions have been great, and I appreciate the opportunity for you to even have me on and talk about this because I admire your perspective. I know we know each other, but we haven't spent a whole lot of time together besides our talking throughout the years in our podcast. But again, from someone who's gone through what you've gone through, losing several different people and several different hierarchies of the familial tree, if you will. It's remarkable, and you're a pillar for someone to continue forward in some capacity with a smile on your face, even though I'm sure it hasn't been easy and wasn't easy. But I think you're an exemplary example of someone who has gone through the ringer and can shed light on something that there is more and there is some light at the end of the tunnel. So I just want to thank you.
Thank you. I've actually lost three more people since we've last spoken. And like my aunt, I was there holding her hand when she passed, two of my best girlfriends. And it's like, I think now I just look at death as so different. To me, it's like, okay, well, you're going up to heaven, you get to be with all your people. And the two of my girlfriends that have passed, they have children. So I've kind of taken them on as, mine. And I, try and love them the way their mom would want me to, or the way they would. So I think we look at things. I think when you've experienced the kind of loss that you and I have, I think that you look at the world differently. I you can't help not, right?
Yeah, yeah. Again, it's I know you alluded to it. Quick, everyone's grief is everyone's grief in some capacity, but at the same time, it's like I don't know what you feel. I haven't got there is a to me there is a big difference, and it's not saying it's not like a hierarchy of what's worse or better. I think as you were alluding to, but I don't know what your experience is outside of what you told me. And from my angle, it's like you've just really experienced a lot. So it's yes, it's shifted. It's clearly changed the way you've perceived life. I'm just more impressed in the way that you still perceive life, despite having gone through what you've gone through. And I think it's beautiful.
Oh, thank you. David is proof that when we stop avoiding grief and start talking about it, something powerful happens. We heal, we connect, and we live more honesty. Dead Talks reminds us that grief is not something to fix or hide, it's something to honor. And by facing what we fear most, we can show up more fully for the lives that we're living right now. Thank you so much for being here, David. I love you. And I'm just so grateful, to know you. And I know we don't get to see each other much, but we send each other notes every now and again, and it means a lot to me. So I just want to thank you for being here. I'm Christina Flach, and I'm too busy, and I'll see you next week.